The advertising ecosystem, the modern web has reached a level of intrusiveness that, for many users, has crossed from tolerable annoyance to genuine interference with the basic experience of using the web. YouTube serves increasingly long and increasingly frequent advertisements that interrupt videos multiple times. Twitch interrupts streams with pre-roll and mid-roll advertisements that are timed to the worst possible moments. News websites hide content behind layers of banner advertisements, autoplay videos, and modal pop-ups that each require specific dismissal. E-commerce sites pepper their pages with sponsored content that is formatted to look like regular content. Streaming services show more advertising each year. The general pattern is that advertisements are more frequent, more disruptive, and more difficult to avoid than they have been in prior eras. For users who have reached the point of not wanting to tolerate this anymore, there is a specific tool that, more than any other, addresses the full scope of modern web advertising. The tool is Public Origin. It is free. It is open source. It works on every major browser, and in 2026, it is still the most effective ad blocker available by a substantial margin over the alternatives. I want to walk you through what Public Origin is, why it is so effective, how to install and configure it, and what the broader implications are for the relationship between users and the advertising ecosystem. Let me start with what Public Origin is, because some confusion exists about it. Public Origin is a browser extension developed primarily by Raymond Hill, an individual developer who has maintained the project as open source for more than a decade. The extension uses filter lists, which are maintained by privacy communities, to block advertisements, trackers, and various other categories of unwanted content on the web. The extension is available for Firefox, for Chrome, and other Chromium-based browsers, and for the various browsers built on those engines. It is free, with no commercial backing, no advertising, no data collection, and no monetization of any kind. Public Origin is distinct from Public, which is a different extension that shares some history with Public Origin, but has been maintained separately by a different developer. The origin in the name refers to Raymond Hill, the original developer, who forked and rebranded the project after disagreements with subsequent maintainers of the older Public. For most practical purposes, Public Origin is the one you want. The other Public variants are not actively maintained and do not offer the same level of protection. The effectiveness of Public Origin comes from several factors. The first is the quality of the filter lists it uses. EasyList, EasyPrivacy, and various regional specialized lists are maintained by volunteers who catalog advertising and tracking infrastructure and publish updates regularly. The filter lists are the authoritative catalog of what should be blocked, and Public Origin uses them efficiently. The lists are updated frequently, which means Public Origin stays current with new advertising methods and tracking techniques as they are deployed. The second factor is Public Origin's implementation. The extension is written efficiently, with minimal memory usage and minimal CPU overhead. It uses the browser's native mechanisms for filtering network requests and modifying page content, which makes it fast and reliable. The extension's architecture allows it to block content at multiple layers, including network requests, element hiding, cosmetic filtering, and script injection, which means it can address advertising that uses different techniques. The third factor is Public Origin's advanced capabilities for users who want them. The default configuration is effective for most users without any customization. For users who want more aggressive blocking, the extension has advanced features including element zapping, which lets you manually block specific elements on pages, and the medium mode, which blocks third-party requests by default and requires explicit allow listing for sites that need them. The advanced capabilities are optional, but they exist for users who want to push the blocking further than the default. The fourth factor is the community maintenance. Public Origin's filter lists are maintained by communities that have been doing this work for years. The specific lists that Public Origin uses by default are among the most carefully curated and most comprehensive in the ecosystem. The community maintenance model, which is open and reviewable, produces better results than the commercial alternatives because the maintainers are not bound by agreements with advertising networks. For specific advertising scenarios, Oblique Origin handles the major cases well. For YouTube advertisements, Oblique Origin blocks the ads that YouTube would otherwise insert into videos. YouTube has, over the years, made aggressive efforts to prevent ad blocking, including specific techniques to detect and respond to ad blockers. The filter list maintainers have kept pace, and Oblique Origin continues to work on YouTube in 2026 for users who keep it updated. There are occasional periods of cat and mouse when YouTube deploys a new anti-ad block technique and the filter lists need to be updated, but the lag is usually short and the overall experience is of a YouTube without advertisements. For Twitch advertisements, the situation is similar but with specific complications because of how Twitch integrates advertising into the video stream itself. Oblique Origin, in combination with additional techniques, including the Twitch Solutions tools and specific Twitch-focused filter lists, can block most Twitch advertising effectively. The specific tools to use vary by Twitch's current implementation, and users may need to consult community resources for the current state of Twitch ad blocking. For general websites, Oblique Origin blocks the common advertising networks, the banner advertisements, the autoplay videos, the pop-up prompts, and most of the cosmetic advertising content. The browsing experience with Oblique Origin enabled is dramatically cleaner than the default browsing experience, and the pages load faster because the advertising infrastructure is not being downloaded and rendered. For tracking and analytics, Oblique Origin blocks the major tracking networks by default. The protection against tracking is not as comprehensive as what dedicated privacy tools offer, but it is substantial for a general-purpose tool, and it addresses most of the common tracking that users encounter on general websites. To install Oblique Origin, open your browser's extension store, search for Oblique Origin. Install the extension from the official developer, which is Raymond Hill. The extension takes effect immediately after installation. No configuration is required for most users. The default settings are appropriate for general browsing. For users who want to customize the configuration, the Extensions Options page provides extensive controls. The filter lists can be adjusted, the advanced features can be enabled. The medium mode can be activated, the specific behaviors can be customized per site or per element. For most users, the defaults are sufficient. For users who want more, the controls are available. One important caveat is that Oblique Origin works best on Firefox. Chrome and other Chromium-based browsers have, over the last year, implemented a new extension API called Manifest v3 that restricts the capabilities of extensions like Oblique Origin. The older Manifest v2 version of Oblique Origin, which was more capable, is being phased out of Chrome. The replacement version, which uses Manifest v3, is less capable than the Firefox version. For users who want the full capability of Oblique Origin, Firefox is the recommended browser. This caveat is one of the reasons I have consistently recommended Firefox, Brave, or LibreWolf over Chrome in my browser recommendations. The Chrome Manifest v3 transition specifically reduces the effectiveness of the most important ad blocker, and the reduction is not an accident. Google, which owns Chrome, is the largest advertising company in the world, and its commercial interests are aligned with weaker ad blocking rather than stronger ad blocking. The Manifest v3 transition is, among other things, a reduction in the power of ad blockers on Chrome. The broader observation is that the advertising ecosystem has been getting more aggressive, and the tools to counter it have been under pressure. Users who want to maintain a reasonable browsing experience, free from the intrusions that the advertising industry has normalized, need to actively deploy the available countermeasures. Oblique Origin is the most important single countermeasure. Installing it in the right browser restores the browsing experience to something like what the web could have been if advertising had not grown as aggressive as it has. The decision to use an ad blocker is, for some users, an ethical question. The websites we visit depend on advertising revenue, and blocking ads reduces their revenue. I am sympathetic to this concern, and I have my own practices around supporting sites I value through direct means. But the level of aggression that advertising has reached, including the tracking, the intrusive formats, and the disregard for user experience, has pushed the ethical balance towards self-defense rather than acceptance. Users who find specific sites worth supporting can support them through subscriptions, through donations, or by whitelisting them in public origin. Users who find the general ad ecosystem unacceptable can protect themselves while still supporting the specific sites they value. Subscribe for the next video, which covers the specific filter lists and advanced configurations that maximize the protection public origin provides, including lists for specific regions, specific languages, and specific categories of content. And in the comments, tell me whether you use public origin and what you think of the browsing experience it provides. The contrast between browsing with public origin and browsing without it is, for most users, substantial, and the first-hand experience is what makes the case clearer than any article or video can.